This is episode 2 of Global Change Biology Bioenergy's new podcast series. I'm Amy Yano. Global Change Biology Bioenergy is a bi-monthly journal that exists to promote the understanding of the interface between biological sciences and the production of fuels directly from plants, algae, and waste. The journal places special emphasis on how bioenergy systems help to mitigate global change. For more information, please visit our website at www.gcbbioenergy.org. Join us now while we discover exciting new findings about bioenergy through interviews with experts in the field. Today we are discussing why perennial bioenergy crops are projected to reduce U.S. reliance on fossil fuels, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and enhance rural economies. We will be talking with research agronomist Marty Schmer and research soil scientist Mark Liebig, the U.S. Department of Agriculture Agricultural Research Service, about an article called Field-Scale Soil Property Changes under Switchgrass Managed for Bioenergy, which can be found in Global Change Biology Bioenergy's March 2011 issue, edited by Marty Schmer, Mark Liebig, Ken Vogel, and Robert Mitchell. Hi, Marty. Hi, Mark. Thank you so much for meeting with me today.
Hi, Amy. It's great to be here. Hello, Amy.
Can you please explain why perennial bioenergy crops like switchgrass are projected to reduce U.S. reliance on fossil fuels, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and enhance rural economies?
Well, perennial bioenergy crops like switchgrass have potential to be converted to transportation fuel or be used for electrical generation, which would displace non-renewable energy sources. Currently, the United States produces about 11% of total petroleum, but consumes around 22% of the petroleum that's extracted each year. When we use a renewable energy source, such as biomass from perennial crops, the thought is we can increase domestic transportation fuel supplies while reducing greenhouse gas emissions. This increased use of biomass, when we use it for transportation fuels, would require capital investment in building cellulosic biorefineries in the rural sector, and would also require specialized jobs to run these facilities.
In one or two sentences, please explain the key findings of this research for our listeners.
We initiated a switchgrass study on multiple farms in North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska. And one of our objectives was to look at soil property changes over a 5-year time span. We saw soil property changes in soil block density, soil pH, soil organic carbon, and soil phosphorus levels. Most of the soil property changes were small over the 5-year study, with the exception of soil organic carbon. These carbon changes averaged across locations showed increases, which would indicate that switchgrass can sequester carbon at different soil depths.
What impact does this finding have on the potential for crops like switchgrass as a bioenergy crop?
Well, these findings reinforce the idea that the use of perennial bioenergy crops like switchgrass has many potential benefits to the environment, not only from the direct displacement of fossil fuels, but the potential to increase carbon in soils. In general, we tend to think that increased soil carbon levels have a positive impact on sustainability and subsequent food crop production when grown in a rotation.
Why is additional information on dedicated perennial bioenergy crop effects on soil productivity at the seed scale considered such an important research need?
Well, ultimately this is an issue of attempting to match the scale of the research with that of production. In bioenergy crops, like most other crops, are produced on working farms, often with large fields, using large equipment, sometimes across variable landscapes. And if we want to understand changes in soil quality under perennial biofuel crops at this scale, then we have to move from small plot research sites where conditions are often ideal and soil variability is fairly small, to real working farms where conditions are not always ideal and variability in soil properties can be quite significant. Conducting this research under sort of real world conditions serves as a truer test of how these bioenergy crops will respond to large scale production practices, and accordingly how the soil will change as a result of those practices.
What is significant about the finding that perennial bioenergy crops grown on marginal cropland can decrease water pollution, reduce water and wind erosion, and improve wildlife habitat over annual row crops?
I think what we're striving to do is to create agricultural production systems that work in harmony with the broader environment. In that regard, one of the key attributes of a perennial crop like switchgrass is the simple fact that you don't have to plant it each year. As a result, a permanent cover is established, over the soil, which essentially serves to protect that soil from the erosive forces of wind and water. Additionally, because of that permanent cover, water from rain or melting snow is more likely to be captured where it falls and infiltrate into the soil rather than run off of a field and then into a stream or a river. Now, those two examples are sort of important co-benefits from having perennial crops on a farm that relate to sort of key soil functions that definitely promote a more environmentally friendly type of farming. Accruing these benefits from perennial crops is definitely magnified when they're realized on marginal cropland, where annual cropping, planting a crop each year, often leads to significant declines in soil quality, greater runoff and erosion, and ultimately over time, lower crop yields. And so by targeting marginal cropland for use with perennial bioenergy crops, we are essentially switching out one production system with known negative effects for another that has a number of co-benefits for the broader environment.
Can you explain why it is important for the effects of switchgrass managed as a bioenergy crop on soil properties to be quantified?
There are a couple of ways to approach this question. And, first, I think it's important to sort of pan back a little bit and acknowledge the central role soil plays in sustaining agriculture. I mean, it seems obvious, but if we don't take care of the soil, we essentially undermine our own survival as a species. Now, I realize that sounds a bit extreme, but there's plenty of evidence to show that past civilizations have sort of come and gone based upon how they treated the soil. If we want to know something about the sustainability of our agricultural production systems, we had better be paying attention to the soil. And in particular, we had better be paying attention to sort of the trajectory or the change in soil properties over time that are known to be very, very important for supporting key soil functions. We certainly don't want to develop production practices that are going to cause harm to the soil. That will only undermine our capacity to produce food, feed, fiber, or in this case, fuel into the future, which wouldn't be sustainable. Now, more specifically with respect to switchgrass, switchgrass is one crop among a large and growing portfolio of crops that can be used for bioenergy production. And it turns out that we have less information about switchgrass than many other bioenergy crops with respect to the soil conditions necessary for its production, as well as changes in the soil caused by switchgrass over time. So by quantifying changes in soil properties under switchgrass, we can develop management practices that will maintain or improve soil quality, which is obviously vitally important for ensuring production stability over the long term. And it's also important to quantify these changes in soil properties from the standpoint of how they might affect the production of subsequent annual crops where switchgrass is used in a multi-year crop rotation.
What are the key points that our listeners should take away from our discussion today?
Well, I think what Mark and I have been alluding to is that, growing switchgrass for bioenergy will provide social, environmental, and economic benefits. One of the key points from this study is that growing switchgrass has the capacity to sequester soil carbon at depth, and also has influence on other soil property changes, but likely these other changes will not impact subsequent crop rotations, especially if producers convert switchgrass back over to annual crop rotations. By increasing the soil carbon levels, this can improve soil quality and help to mitigate greenhouse gas emissions.
Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Well, thank you, Amy. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, we appreciate the opportunity. Thanks.
I hope our listeners will join us for our next podcast, where we will continue to explore exciting new findings about bioenergy through interviews with experts in the field. Learn more at www.gcbbioenergy.org.